At times, I found myself wanting to pull my hair out with Myles. I found myself getting a little frustrated with him because it seemed like he had nine lives, right? He would find himself in trouble with the law, but then he was able to slip out, facing limited consequences, if that. But he would then go back to a life of crime. And this book really, at some points, it seemed stranger than fiction. One of my favorite parts was that at some points, Myles would dress up, pretend to be a doctor, pretend to be an expert in all things Asian artifacts, would go into a museum, this was one of his ruses, and then talk to people there, talk to the workers there, act like he was an expert, and eventually steal from that museum. I'm curious, in all of these decades worth of stories when it comes to Myles and when it comes to his relationship with his best friend, what are some of your takeaways? What surprised you the most between that relation and as well about Myles himself?
Boy, I think what surprised me most, and I knew he was a member of Mensa before I met him, so I knew that he was a brilliant person. I think what surprised me about him as an individual is his magnetism. He's very charismatic. I've seen him time and again. I'm having lunch with him or something, and someone will come by and I'll introduce him, and people are just drawn into him. Um, the other thing that interests me is that he is exactly what he purports to be. So he is a lover of Japanese swords. That is his life's passion to this day. And he could have done so much with his life, but even when he would steal these items, it was about cashing them in somehow, rewards, that sort of thing, and and turning it into Japanese swords and other Japanese antiquities because this is what he loves. Not long ago, I said to him, you still have a lot of pieces that are legal. Why don't you sell them? You could live really well. And he just turned to me and said, Anthony, there's a thing called collecting. And that's it. And it's like, this is his passion. He's anything you've ever heard about him in terms of his acumen when it comes to art, his skill as a thief, or his cunning mind um, is accurate. And lastly, I would say, Brittany, his friendship with this gentleman named Al Donnelly, who is a straight arrow, who built a really credible career with some of the country's biggest stars at the time, and is one of the most likable human beings you'll ever encounter. And these two are such a yin and yang. Even physically, Al is 6'4" and Myles is about 5'6", and everything about them seems opposite, but they have this brotherly love for each other that spanned coming up on 70 years.
And you really detail that in the book. And like I said, I mean, this plays out like the plot of a movie. You have the one best friend from childhood who's on the straight and narrow, has this amazing music career. You have Myles Connor, you have a career criminal there, but he's bound by this code of ethics that he has, this personal code of ethics of loyalty, of friendship. You note in the book that if you, as a friend now of Myles Connor, left $10,000 on the table and got up, he would never steal from you because that's just not what his ethos is. Do you think that that personal code contributed to how he became or how he was such now this infamous, almost greatest art criminal in the world?
Without a doubt. That is really insightful the way you put that because Miles, with this code and his intellect, you have to think he's in his early 20s and he goes to prison, Walpole State Prison in Massachusetts, which at the time was one of the most dangerous prisons in the country. And um, despite his young age, when there were riots that made national news, despite his young age, he was the person that the convicts elected to represent them. You have all these hardened criminals, nobody's fool, and they turn to this young person, and he does such a great job representing them. He gets them ultimately, he gets them conjugal visits, and he gets them Harvard professors who would come in and lecture to them because he saw them as human beings and not as animals. Um, they remain loyal to him, and this is what made him fearsome in the underworld. One of the things that Another thing that surprised me I had never thought about until I wrote this book is that he was pulling off all these crimes in Boston where there were two incredibly dangerous competing criminal organizations, the Irish Mafia and the Italian Mafia. Both sought tribute from anybody who was committing crimes in the city. None of them dared approach Myles to try to threaten him because number one, they knew his power as an individual, but they also knew that his gang didn't operate out of because they were being paid. It was strict loyalty, and that made him very dangerous to those